Recording has begun. All right, welcome to the January 15th, 2019. Yes, it's 2019 already. Charts chat. I will drop in the agenda into chat here. And really, it's just the stuff that I put in because nobody else did. So I put in the things here, and I was actually hoping add none would come. So because I actually wanted to talk about the first one that I had here is scaling the hub. So if you've looked at the hub pulls down every single chart to the local browser and does all the filtering and everything there. And that doesn't scale, right? If we get to 100 or 500 organizations and things like that, we've got to go change some of those things.
Matt, are you talking about doing something like an infinite scroll or other kinds of solutions that would help browsers get less data? Or
well, it kind of gets more complicated. So if you go to the hub right now, right, you'll see, and so infinite scroll would let you do that. But then how do you sort things? By alphabetical? Then people game it, things like that. You probably need a different homepage than everything being there. But it gets more complicated. If you go to the charts page, right? So the charts page lists everything. It pulls it down, and then your search is a client-side search.
Yeah, okay.
So say you've got 1,000 charts, or say you go to 2,000 or 3,000 charts. I mean, we're already, what are we at, like 500? And there's like 3 repos to add to it. We're at 491, and there's several more repos to add in the backlog, right? So say you get to a couple thousand. You're going to pull out all of that metadata, and then you're going to do client-side searching on it. Doesn't sound great to me. We probably need to move things more towards server side as far as that goes. So that's what I was looking at, hoping to have a discussion on, but it doesn't look like add none's here because we got to figure out how we're going to do that and who's interested in going to write these things. But that is one of those things we need to track down.
This is interesting. So the search at the very top, though, like,
yeah.
Oh, so it just loads everything into memory. So even if you're in a different page, like for instance, if you're on a page like something that is, well, I don't know, just for fun, a specific Helm repo like the page for GitLab, and then in the search, if you do a search for MySQL, it will pull up all of the ones that even aren't on that page. Is it because all the rest was still loaded in the background into memory, or?
Everything gets pulled down, and then all filtering and everything is client side.
Okay,
right?
Got it.
So if you go to search for like MySQL, right, it'll say there's none in GitLab, but that's because it filtered down to GitLab, and then it filters that down to MySQL, all client side. If you actually go look at the requests, no requests go out to do that filtering because it already has every chart and all its metadata.
I didn't look at the requests. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's what.
And by the way, the search does work across repos, but I guess it must still do the same thing you're saying.
But yeah, it's all client-side search right now, and that doesn't scale to thousands. The other thing that we have a problem with here is right now we've got so many repositories. We need to handle scaling to hundreds of repositories. Right? What does the UX look like if you have 100 repositories? Because right now they're all just listed. And they're not in any kind of order or anything. So these are the kinds of things we need to work on. And we need to find some developers who want to go work on this. There's an issue I linked to just to create an issue around it and have conversations on, but we'll have to go figure out how do we do this and rack up people. I'm going to try and bug Butcher to get a person over on his team who maybe want to do this. I can't remember who did some of this stuff before, but Microsoft was involved back when it was days. So I'm going to go bug them. And if we know of other developers who are front-end folks who want to jump into this, this is an opportunity for them to get involved too. So as long as we have issues and clear direction on how to handle this, then it's the kind of thing where they can jump on. So
has anyone quantified?
No,
Yeah,
go ahead, Lucky.
Have you quantified what the memory impact is in terms of as a way to prioritize how urgent this is, because client side does scale. Server side may not. But I'm just, I say that tongue in cheek, but how much of a problem is this for 500 charts with 10 repos? Like, are we talking gigs already, or are we talking?
No. The
megs?
problem comes when we go to thousands of charts and many, many more repos. And we have a steady trickle of a few in per week, and we haven't even put out documentation on how to run your own chart yet, which is in our backlog. So as soon as it's very easy, I would not be surprised to see many, many more show up. Right now, I'm merging about 3 a week on average. And so if that holds up, even in 6 months, we're probably talking a number of repositories where the UX doesn't scale, and we're talking maybe closing in on a number of charts where your client-side memory has trouble because you have thousands of charts you have to deal with. And so I'm trying to hit this off before it becomes a problem. So that way end users never experience it and we never scramble. I'm thinking ahead here.
No, that's fine. I just wondering in terms of, timeliness.
Yeah, and I would guess that mid-year or late in the year is when this will start to impact us as a problem. And so if we plan for it now and do work now, then we can launch updates to the hub that account for this. And so it's no longer an issue. Yeah, Scott.
Okay.
You raise your hand.
Cool. That's a good question, Lockie. I was just my thought too is that a slightly more some people have already begun to bring up issues about the confused about really the purpose of, or not the purpose, but the what the hub represents. And I think we had earlier discussed some potential UX concerns that we wanted to address around it. Here's an example. Matt, I think you know this one because you just, I think, probably, if I remember right, merged the OpenFOSS. Oh no, I guess I merged it. But anyway, you were involved in it, so you might have seen this. So the founder of OpenFOSS was like, hey, I noticed that there were some non-upstream charts for there's a non-upstream chart for OpenFOSS on here. What's up with that? And I was just like, well, that's part of the concept of this, And I linked to one of the issues that Remus noted, a UX issue that would just kind of make the canonical location of that hub really obvious, just visually. And there may be some other things that we can do, but I just wanted to at least mention it in the same breath as what you're talking about. Because that's
basically repo as a namespace as a repo, yeah.
Right, to namespace it, and it's not really a machine scalable thing. It's more of the human side of scaling it is, are people already getting confused, and can we cut that off at the pass too?
So one of the things to think about, right? Think about Composer and packages, because I think it's a good corollary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many people will have many different packages, right, to talk to things.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be other PHP libraries to talk to S3 that are separate from what AWS puts out, right? Mm-hmm. And you can see a lot of that in who the namespace organization is. Mm-hmm. And the question is, and this has come up more than once, and I know packages doesn't even solve for this yet, to say, whose do you go with, right? So for example, Oracle may put out a MySQL chart, and yet 5 other people may put out one as well, and they're different. How do you prioritize which one to use? The one that everybody's installing? How do you collect data on that? The one that's the canonical because a business put it out, is that the right way to go for the UX, right? Maybe it's not even that great compared to some of the others, but the business put it out. Do you highlight that first? I think this is a UX question for it more than anything else. And I would want to engage a bunch of UX research on it and think it through beforehand. But yes, I do see the problem. In fact, this has come up out of the CNCF because, of course, the CNCF deals with lots of businesses, and businesses who put out charts want their chart first, no matter what, even if a community one isn't as good,
mm-hmm.
right? So how do we navigate that?
Yeah. So I didn't do a full summary, but I gave a short review of the things I remember that we had discussed in that issue comment. Maybe there's another canonical place we can talk about it.
Does anyone have folks in the Ansible community that they know really well? Because they went through the same problem you just talked about, Matt. And I don't actually know that they did resolve it, or if they lit things on fire and said, "Well, that's Ansible Galaxy is no longer a thing." But they went through the same thing, and I think the folks at Chef as well. So we should ask them what their kind of easiest way to deal with this for both maintainers and users would be.
Yeah, I feel like
folks have context.
I feel like what I do, yeah. I feel like what happened is Jeff Geerling just took over Galaxy.
And then that's it. Done. So
yeah, we could
talk
ask
to Jeff.
Right. Yeah.
And actually, Docker, the Docker Hub has the same problem.
Right.
They have exactly the same thing, and they have 3 types of images: the official ones, the Docker maintained ones, and the community ones. So
and they have like badges or something like that essentially now, which is like this is now official, or that's kind of how they handle it.
Yes, exactly. Okay. But there are 2 types of official images. The images maintained by Docker themselves. Docker pay some people to maintain images, and the official from the vendor itself.
Right.
For example, the Postgres image is made by Docker and not by the maintainers of Postgres. So it makes it difficult to know what is an official image. It's a reference image, or is it from the vendor itself?
Yeah, and for their official images, right, they have a separate repo that's just in. It links off to other repos. They have very tightly coupled maintainers who said this is an official image. And so it gets that tag. It's sort of like what we have in stable, or what we would have wanted stable to be, but most of the time we don't get official people to sign up for the duty and maintain it, right? And so that's where some of the problem comes in. Their official is sort of like stable if every single thing had maintainers who owned up to it and had to maintain that stuff and keep things up to date, because that's kind of what they've done. And they've added security on top of it. So everything that's an official image actually is tied in through Notary. So you can actually notarize and do all the security on those images. They've kind of put a bunch of best practices on it, along with who is the responsible party and full traceability. You can actually go into GitHub and start tracing these things down and when things happened and all of that. Especially if you want to go bug them because they haven't updated for security things that are out, and you want to go bug them, get a release of the official image because the upstream project has fixed these. You can actually trace all of that and where to go. But yeah. Yeah, and I don't know what we want to do here.
Well, we're probably not going to solve it in this meeting, right? Do we want to maybe make a location where we can have an ongoing discussion about this in one place we can point people to?
I would put it as a hub issue to discuss.
Yeah.
Did you want to start it?
Sure.
Great. Yeah, I think it's one of those things we need to talk about. As far as a priority of solving it, I put things like the deploy automation, the scaling problem, the next option, which is the search and API and all of that tied into the Helm CLI, all those things as higher priorities than solving this UX problem. And I mean, other people may see different priorities, but scaling and automation, and then the Helm CLI stuff, which ties into V3, those are just the higher priorities to me.
So just a question. I mean, the scope of this issue could be more narrow or more broad. Very broad could just be UX improvements. But I think the issue that we're talking about now is help people understand what? Help people understand the
chart
we don't
health.
want to just sorry?
The chart health. Right?
Yeah.
The health of the chart, or there's some. Essentially, what they want to know is how maintained is this, right? Or is this the right one?
But that, how do you know the right one? So 3 people put out a MySQL one, right? And we'll even go with OpenFAS, right? The OpenFAS folks said, hey, there's another chart in here that's OpenFAS. That's not the official one. What is an official chart, and are there labels on it? How do we do that, right? Maybe that problem, because it doesn't get into the health. It gets into the desire to have officiality. And then I would put a second issue in to figure out how do we say the health of the chart. So could we get those 2 UX ones?
Yeah, so this one, the first one just seems very, very broad, like just help chart users understand which chart to use. And maybe we can kind of narrow down as we go.
But I wouldn't even word it like that. Just say, just clearly namespaced. So that I can see an OpenFaz, I can see a Locky 83 OpenFaz.
So there is
you don't want to make partisanship through. I don't think we want to address partisanship or official charts here.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing that I want to get to. We've been asked by the CNCF, and now the OpenFaz folks have brought it up to say an official one. Is there a way to handle an official one and highlight that one differently? It's come up. We should point blank hit the nail on the head, discuss it, come to a conclusion, close it. So when it comes up again, we can reference that issue, right? Because this has come up more than once, and I know there's more general concerns, but I think talking about the idea of having an official chart listing, how do we handle that UX? How do people do that? I think that's an important one to just cut to the chase and just have an issue on it and not have it as part of another one. So that way, the next time Dan comes to talk to me about this, I can say, Dan, here's the issue. We talked about it very clearly. We had these meetings on it. We listed it out. This is what we came to and why as our current iteration. Because otherwise, they'll keep coming back if it's not straight to the point.
Okay, so
first I made one. So the issue then is just a way to make official charts, a process to officiate a chart.
Or just say we're not going to have official charts because namespacing is enough that people can differentiate on.
Yeah.
But to have a stance on that topic.
Okay, so I made one agree on whether or how to handle official charts in Hub. Since we're not agreeing on that in this meeting, it's just an issue to deal with that, however we go. And Lockie, there is an issue already made for what you brought up for namespacing. So that's done, or I mean not done, but that's clarified. And then the last issue that needs to be made is chart health, and then we can use that as a placeholder for moving ahead.
And for that, we'll probably want to be able to have some kind of CI that can look at the different charts and do some static analysis and things like that. We got, or maybe not CI, but static analysis, and we go monitor. Oh, a new version of a chart came in. Let's go do static analysis on it, and then maybe we can present a label, kind of like what Go Report Card does. We can give it an A+, an A, and here's characteristics to look at. We actually have a lot of static analysis tools already. We can probably point at it as a starting point for something like this.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. But yeah, that's what I would ask for. Let's get issues for those things in, and then we can chase them down. And we'll have a lot more time when we don't have to deal with the stable charts repo anymore.
Yeah.
All right. So that's. I'll actually break out the UX one here in our notes real quick.
Oh, I'll actually add these to the notes rather than just the chat.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm just updating. And then okay. All right, so I put those two things in. The next thing that somebody had on here was hub deploy automation. Who added that one in?
I did. Just as a follow-up to what you said, I know right now we have to do manual deploys, and I believe you already made an issue about this.
I don't know. If not, we do. I had hoped to have the time to get going on it, but I just haven't had the time yet. Part of this is actually going to be to move our private repo somewhere else so that automation can get access to it. And so there's a bunch going on. I quite frankly just have not had the time. If somebody else wants to start looking at it, I'd be happy to help ramp them up. For me, it'll probably be a month before I get time.
I would love to help with whoever else is interested, or just alone.
Okay. Yeah, if you wanted to pair for like a half an hour, we could actually create an issue and then do tasks for this. So if you wanted to grab that, we could do an issue. We could come up with a checklist of the things that need to happen, and then somebody could start working through it.
Okay. I'll make an issue now just as a placeholder, and we can. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. I lost my pen already. Okay. The next one was searching the hub from the Helm CLI as a replacement for stable. So one of the reasons people like to have things in stable is as soon as you install Helm and you do a search, it's right there. I don't know how many people actually use search, but it is right there, and that's part of the experience, right? And if you go to something like the Docker CLI today, you can do Docker search for something. You can either point it at Quay or out of the box, it searches Docker Hub, and you can search everything, official, non-official, all of it. So one of the things that I wanted to put in here was the idea of actually maybe baking into the Helm Hub an external search mechanism where you could search for things. I did put an issue into Monocular already, but I think this falls here, and we need to figure out how to handle this because that'll be an important thing, and we should make it work with Helm 3. The other thing that'll make Helm 3 interesting is, if those of you who don't know, we're looking to replace the registry v2 and the Helm custom repositories and all that with using container repositories instead. Some folks know this here, but we are actually working with the OCI to look at how can you push charts into container repositories and pull them from there, and then map search on top of that. And so this would, of course, impact some of that UX as well, but that's one of the other things that's going on. But basically being able to search, and if you could do search, and out of the box, it searches the Helm Hub, then that could aggregate all of these separated repositories. What do y'all think about that?
I mean, I think it's a good idea. So at the moment, when you install Helm out the box, the only repo that's added is the stable upstream repo.
Correct.
And are you suggesting as a task that we should add Helm Hub and replace stable, or just to have both?
The goal we've had is to remove the stable repository from Helm v3, and then in Helm v3, once Helm v2 is deprecated, possibly entirely deprecate the stable repository altogether because we've federated everything.
But or the stable repository is just fronted by Helm Hub, so we don't issue the URL directly.
Yeah, but then it comes down to maintenance because anything in the stable repository we have to maintain, and we're looking to push out everything so that way we don't have to maintain a lot of these things anymore to maintain all these charts.
But if I'm hearing what Lockie you're saying, am I hearing you right that Hub would be a way of wrapping even the stable charts for now, but then when we want to deprecate it, we just remove it from the Hub? Like, so for example, am I hearing you right that for instance, if we made the Hub somehow a federation aggregator, like what I think you're describing, Matt, that gets shipped with Helm, then right now already everything from the stable, Helm charts is in there. So it wouldn't be removing anything, it would just be adding things, and then when we want to deprecate it, we just remove that from the Hub?
Yeah, that would work. I mean, the idea is those stable things would still be there for Helm v3 until we deprecate the repo without having to bake it in out of the box. But it would just treat stable like any other repository by having it go through the Hub.
Right. Yeah. 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 That way, it's just a Hub PR to remove that from without having to bother. Yeah.
And the functionality difference is the reason people want things in stable is it's baked in and you can search for it by default. That is why many folks want to have their stuff in stable. And so I'm not thinking about how, I'm thinking about the what. If we transition the search over to the Hub, what we've essentially done is that carrot that gets them to want to have it in stable is now shifted so they're willing to host it on their own, but still have it in search out of the box. That's what I'm trying to do, move the carrot in that way.
Yeah, I'd be for changing the default repository from stable to Hub.
Well, I wouldn't make it a default repository. I would say there's a search API, and when you do Helm search in Helm v3, it does a server-side call to there. It doesn't download everything because we're going to get to thousands of things. We already know we have scale problems there, but it calls over there and does a search there and gets the response for Helm v3. So it's a server-side search.
Yeah, no, understood.
Yeah.
But for the V2 stuff now, can't you flip the endpoint to Helm Hub to search, or you don't want to put that load there?
Isn't that a breaking change? Because we're essentially saying it's stable, it's stable, it's stable. Now you upgrade Helm, and maybe your CI goes and installs something and does a Helm init, and now instead of stable, it's the hub. And
the namespacing.
you got namespacing, you've got other charts in there, you're now doing a breaking change for end users, especially those that do automation. And I don't think we can change stable by doing that. That's my concern.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
kind of a confluence of things here too, because if you deprecate stable, then nobody has a place to publish charts. But if you put that in a container registry, then people can, if I'm a chart maintainer for my own garbage, I would have to run a chart repo at the moment.
Yeah. And so I would suggest is in Helm v3, add a search API to the hub, and then in Helm v3, make search call that API by default, unless you're going to talk to a specific repository, and then you search that its way. But by default, it does the hub, and we just make that a Helm v3 thing, and we don't change things for Helm v2 because we don't want to break anything, right?
Yeah, agreed. Just break it with Helm v3.
Yeah, break everybody with v3. Well, we already are saying we're going to break things.
Everything's expected to be broken.
Yeah.
Right. I think, by the way, just before rounding this one out, what I was thinking initially, if we wanted it to be pre-broken, like before a breaking change, before the major Semver update, the namespacing I thought would still hold, because right now the Helm charts repo stable directory and the Helm charts repo incubator directory is, I think, how we namespace right now in Hub. The stable from the charts repo is still what we call stable.
So let's say this though, right? The hub has, say, the OpenFAS official, and then this other OpenFAS one, right? We would have to mock the hub by saying it is a repo. We can't say it's a federation of repos. There is no mechanism in the V1 spec to do that. So now you've got two separate OpenFAS charts showing up in the same repository. How do you do that? Because you don't have that namespace level designation within an index.yaml. We don't have that ability to aggregate.
Yeah, you're right. For now, yeah, you're right. For now, we tell people to manually add the repo for each.
Yeah, and it's pointless doing an index YAML of index YAMLs on something that's eventually going to be deprecated.
Right. Good point. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Do we have an ETA for Helm v3?
Probably this summer sometime.
Okay, because already I've seen a few charts that are unstable, deprecated in favor of external charts, from the Elasticsearch one, for example. So isn't it a problem until this summer? Because, well, we are in a state where charts unstable exist, but they are no longer maintained. So how do we handle that?
If it's not maintained and stable, we should deprecate it. Some people may not care if they show up in the default search. Weaveworks has never cared if they show up in the default search, and they have told people to go to their repos where they manage it. They've never cared. And so some people will care and some won't. The ones that don't care will move off earlier.
Okay.
This is a social thing, not a technical thing, right?
Yeah, of course.
Desires of an organization. Some companies want my thing to show up in that default search, and their product people want it.
I'm thinking about a newcomer trying Helm for the first time, installing the friendly thing, and well, it's an old thing. It's no longer maintained. It contains security issues, and this newcomer currently, until this summer, has to go to the chart repository, read the README, understand that he has been deprecated, and add manually another repository. So it's a bit misleading for this newcomer who just want to understand and just think Helm is kind of broken.
Well, yeah, we'll have some overlap time here. I don't have the
Yeah.
perfect answer. As long as the documentation is clear on where people should go for the new one, and it's deprecated here, right? Because if somebody's installing from Fluent D, for example, I would expect they go into Fluent D's docs to see the install instructions,
Yes.
and there they can tell you, add this repository, then go ahead and install it, right? They can have that there. If somebody is doing a search on stable, they'll see deprecated and they'll see instructions to go over to this other chart in this other location. And if somebody's doing a search on the hub or kubeapps, it won't even show up in stable because it's marked as deprecated, right? But they will say Fluent D added theirs to search or to the hub, then the Fluent D one would show up in that search and they could add it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting to consider in all this talking that we've got is sunsetting stable, getting the search APIs in Helm 3. But the thing that irks me, or the thing that we need to consider, is that the content is actually what makes Helm valuable, and still a lot of that content is in stable. So either, if as I'm a maintainer of 2 or 3 stable charts, where do I take them and put them? Or do I just let them die with Helm 2? And I feel like letting them die with Helm 2 is probably a miss for the community. And I don't know, and I haven't talked to Matt, whether there's a Helm 2 to Helm 3 chart transition tool or something like that. But I just don't know. I feel like there always needs to be a community repo for this stuff. But I get the point that I don't want to maintain other people's charts.
Yeah, and this is the problem we ran into, right? So the stable repo, we can't get enough people to maintain, and people burn out and rotate through, and we can't handle that scale. That's been our problem, right? And so if we say, well, we need a community repo, we can't handle the scale of a community repo.
Yeah, so I guess you're better off letting organizations that pay people to do it. So there'll be community charts only if you have the time to do them.
Yeah, and different people may create their own community charts. You may have 2 or 3 for the same thing by different people, and they may even maintain them, and maybe they choose to work together. Who knows how that'll work out? But yeah, one of the things in our backlog for the hub is to document how you can run a repository. So that way we can give them simple step-by-step instructions on how to do it, along with pointers to tools that they can use. So that way it becomes very easy, almost as easy, it won't be as easy as running a homebrew tap for repository V1s, and eventually to make it as easy as pushing a container image in container repositories.
But Helm 3 isn't instantly going to replace Helm 2. There's got to be a lag time of a year or so.
Helm 3
will support Helm 2 charts?
Yes, for the most part. 99% of charts the goal is to do. So there are features, and I will not talk about them because I don't want anybody to use them, that Helm 2 charts can do today that you will not find anybody doing on GitHub. They are very cryptic. Some of them were baked into Helm 2 to support installing OpenStack into Kubernetes, and they're very they're not nice, right? And so those things are going to break and be replaced by Lua, but most Helm charts that are Helm v2 charts will run in Helm v3, and the goal is to have Helm v3 or Helm, the repositories from Helm v2 still be completely supported in Helm v3. They won't fall out until Helm v4. And so you can continue to do that. And so all the repositories will still work. Almost all charts, 99.9% of charts should still work that came for Helm v2 in Helm v3. That's the goal we're having here. Right, we want to carry people forward.
Can I put 2 cents about the community repos?
I'm sorry, what was that?
No, can I put my 2 cents about community repos? Yes, doesn't make any sense, of course, to have them. But for example, I deprecated my charts, hosting on my Helm repo, it's in the hub, and the same people contributing were in Helm stable charts, we contribute in my repo now. I'm totally fine with that, I am maintaining a couple of my charts people contribute on review. It's damn easy.
Yeah.
Maintaining hundreds of them, that's a big job. And I don't see a point to have community repo at all.
It's hard. It doesn't scale vertically.
Yeah. No, it doesn't scale. People are not happy. Oh, I made a small thing change and takes weeks. So.
And they're very, very frustrated with us
that
we are not moving fast enough with the community repo. People are downright upset with us. We had somebody do an issue in frustration. We've had many people express frustration at the long time it takes because there aren't enough of us to handle that scale. So we need a different model because they're getting upset with us, and they will.
Doing frustration ops, like someone pinged me like me and admin like 5 times, and I only just saw it, and I was like, oh, sorry, I'll prioritize this.
It's fire, right? Who pings us, and we'll go put out that fire that we become aware of because there's too many of them. We can't handle scaling community. We have to come to a different model.
Or vice versa. You review the chart, right? Changes, and ask for changes, and people come back a month later again.
Yeah.
So.
And so we've had trouble. Like, so some folks have been really good. Like Bitnami has been fantastic about their charts and their repo, right? And they've got issues, they've got all of that, and the Bitnami bot just brings them over to our repo. But how well are they able to look at the issues that come in on theirs in the community repo, right? And then act on them and get pinged on them. They get pinged on pull requests, but not on issues coming in. And so it makes it hard to have a good maintainer lifecycle there. And so right now it's just a mess. And so I would really want to get everybody be able to run their own and scale down stable. And then, the goal would be to deprecate it. And if for some reason we say, no, it's gotten small enough, we've come up with rules around it, we could revisit it. But at least if we've made it into a place where it's deprecated or deprecatable, we've enabled the community enough to scale. And I think that's really important because now we've built the tools and processes and enablement that allows them to scale, and we're not blockers on them anymore. At least that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and hosting on GitHub pages, so easy.
Yeah. So. All right, done enough ranting on that. I think we got some good actions. We can go put stuff into the Helm v3 project board. In fact, I'll take that on. I'll put the search into the Helm v3 project board and touch base with Adnan on it. All right. The next thing that I'd put on here was the maintainers who are inactive. We have a bunch of maintainers who are inactive, many of them who have burnt out or have moved on to other things and just aren't active anymore. And as part of the governance to come in for Helm into the CNCF, we set rules around inactivity and defaulting to no longer being maintainers. We have some folks who've had absolutely zero activity. Like you can't even say there was activity. You can actually go to dev stats for Helm, and you can go to the contributors, and you can filter that down to all contributions. Even a comment on an issue, right, gets shown as a contribution. You can filter that down. You can scope it to the 3 months, which is the window we have, and you can see who hasn't. And so some of those folks we probably need to ping and double check to see whether they're going to bring their activity back, or by default, unless something happens, they fall out of being maintainers just by the governance, and we'll need to update. And so I see last week there was some talk about, by the way, for the governance stuff, it was all in the governance doc. And we've passed the point of where it's been over 3 months of the governance. So if you want to read that, that is over here. And you can actually read what it actually says here is the maintainers, and this is for the project maintainers who are doing things like Helm charts, must remain active. If they are unresponsive for greater than 3 months, they will be automatically removed unless a supermajority of other project maintainers agrees to extend the period to be greater than 3 months. So basically that means, that was designed if somebody goes on like maternity or paternity leave or something and is just dropping off for a while. We're like, hey, that's great, right? But if somebody's honestly no longer responsive or anything, then we can look at removing them. And we've got people who are in that position. And so are we good with, we should probably call a vote on it, but I think we could do a lazy consensus on Emeritus chart maintainers and then start pinging people. And I've already pinged one of them, and I think I discovered another one who has 0 contributions. And we can start saying, hey, did you want to come back in? Or you're going to fall out due to the inactivity here, and then just start bumping them to Emeritus. And they're welcome to come back and go through the process again. What do y'all think?
Sounds good.
I feel like pinging on the first round, just because the governance is still 3 months in, but then just automate it. And, going for me too, if I fall off 3 months, if I'm willing to come back, I'll make noise, right? It's got to be lazy. It's got to be lazy re-entry, lazy exit and forced re-entry.
I see how you're doing. See, I'm a little different. I don't want to write the automation for this, and so I would want to, go look at it like every month, and then ping people and say, "Hey, did you mean to do it?" And if they say, "Oh, no," and they jump back in, then I'm totally cool with it. But I am more of the personable. Don't just kick people out. Actually, do a human review of these things. But yes, okay. I see.
I can take an action on reviewing everybody who hasn't committed in 3 months. Run that by you, Matt,
Sure.
and then IRC order. And then I can draft an email and get consensus.
Sure.
Should I document? Is there any of the process I should document as I go, or is this just going to be a human process? We're happy to just write an email, ping them if they come back.
Sure.
What's the grace period you're giving them?
I would start with the human process because it might take us a while to write the automation. And if you want to look, don't just ping me. I would say ping the maintainers mailing list.
I'll do it.
You did it too, because it's not just me here.
What's the process for Emeritus? Are we documenting Emeritus status?
I would say anybody who falls off goes Emeritus.
I think that's where we landed, right? There was a bit of discussion on one of the the mailing list, right? I think the question was, well, what about people who kind of just started and then never really did anything? Isn't that kind of a lofty title for someone who didn't really do that? But then it just seemed like, well, then what's our criteria? So let's just do that. I don't know. Isn't that where it landed, Matt? At least that's what I recall.
I don't think I was there last week.
No, I mean there was a
on the mailing list.
On the mailing list? I think it was something like that. Yeah, like what do you do for criteria? Yeah.
And it just seemed like nobody knew what or wanted to deal with like the complexities of criteria. So I think it just landed like, well, if that's what we call it, that's what we call it for everyone.
Yeah.
And if we want to call it something else someday, we can.
Well, if the entry criteria is reviewing things and labeling them, you should have some track record of doing that.
Yeah.
But if that, so I would agree with that statement. You don't become a maintainer. You don't get knighted for not having done things.
Right.
I don't know if knighted is a good for the non-commonwealthers here.
So here's what I'll do, Lockie. If you're up for drafting the email to people who are on it, and that we'll send to people and look at it, then I would say I will email the Helm, the charts maintainers, to do a lazy consensus on creating Emeritus. I think that we're basically in agreement, but I want the documented track record, right? And so that's where I would do it, just to do lazy consensus, and we'll give it like 3 days and just bump anybody to it, and I'll email it out because we've had a bunch of talks, but we've never done anything. This is one of those things we could probably do with lazy consensus because it's the default decision-making process for the governance. And so we'll just officially get that in an email chain.
Okay, so just to confirm, I do the list, I send the emails, and throw it in the mailing list, and you're going to do the Emeritus status thing. Okay.
Yeah, and
Do you have a query floating around for dev stats? Otherwise, I can dig. I can find it. If you have one, I'll use it. Otherwise,
I do. Let me go pull it up.
Do you mind just? You don't have to do it now, but after this or whatever, you can throw it in Slack for me.
Yeah, no, I've got this because I've done it. I've looked this up a bunch of times. I've actually emailed. Where's that emailed? I emailed one person about it, and they haven't gotten back to me. It was drawing a blank on the name right now.
Are you thinking not to kind of put the cart before the horse? Are we going to sliding window this, or it's just one person holds the torch for 3 months? I'm the emeritus. I have the big sword, and all I do, because I'm just like, do we do this once every 3 months, or do every week I say, hey, somebody else has popped off the radar?
I would put it at only like once a month or once every 2 months we do this, something like this thing, right? Maybe once a month we go, hey, let's go take a quick look to see. I wouldn't do it more than that because that's putting a lot of process work on.
Yeah, okay. Are we looking at, do you have any numbers? Are we looking at 4 to 6? Or are we looking at 10? I can look. It's my action. Not volunteer telling you to do it again.
Yeah.
I believe that if we do this, there will be a lot of orphan charts. So we need to really pay attention and be really reactive for new.
But this is only org maintainers, right? Not chart maintainers.
This is only old maintainers who have stopped doing any maintaining at all.
Okay.
That's what we're doing.
But this is for the Helm org, right? Not for chart maintainers.
I would just do charts because each team handles this independently. So Helm itself would handle it independently, and Chart Museum or Monocular would each handle it independently.
Okay.
At least that's the way it's scoped in the governance right now. It kind of looks like it's an independent thing that would happen. So I would just start with charts and not everybody. I just dropped in a link here, Lockie, and I'll send this over to you.
Just dumping it in my Slack too.
Okay. And you can filter on other things there as well. This just does the whole Helm org contributions. Yeah. And I've already sent Michael Goodness an email because he hasn't been around in a long time, and I knew that.
Okay. Is that the only one?
He hasn't responded to me. Sean Knox is another one who has no contribution.
I will talk to both of them. I have their phone numbers. Just so happened.
Yeah, and I haven't looked into any of the others. Like I haven't actually looked. What's Foxish done? Foxish has 3 total things in the last 3 months, so I guess that still counts. Although I think that does count to charts. His 3 things were charts. He's not very active, but he does have 3 contributions in the last quarter, which still contribute. So I think there's a few in here which are really low, and then others, and we'll probably want to keep an eye on in the coming months. And then there's others who just have been gone for a while. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I totally lost the meeting minutes. Where's my window with meeting minutes? Crud. Was there any other topics? There we go.
No, there was just that general bug that I hit that I was still trying to get to the bottom of with CRDs in the hooks. Right, there were several charts that are failing, saying that, the CRD is already installed, and I went on a look-see into why that was happening, and there was some bug in Helm that was processing them twice. So I was doing a pre-hook and an install, which is why they were failing. And there's a PR open to bump all the tooling to the latest, which should resolve that issue.
Okay.
But that's just an FYI.
Wait, you've got a PR open. Is the bug fixed in Helm Upstream?
Yes.
Okay, so we just need to update our stuff?
Yeah. And I've prepped all that with Reinhardt. So it should be good. I'll ping him to see if we're good to merge it. But
okay.
If you see any things that install a CRD and then trigger a CRD already installed error. There seems to be a bug in the version of Helm we're using in the E2E suite.
Okay.
And it was specifically there's only 2 charts using this mechanism. You know, the CRD-install hook. There's only Prometheus and Grafana or something that uses this. Actually, it's Cert Manager, actually. So they're trying to merge an upstream change in Cert Manager. But Cert Manager uses these hooks, and so does Prometheus. So they're the only 2, the Prometheus operator specifically. They're the only 2 charts that have this issue.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Prometheus and Cert Manager, 2 ones that I think are important. Okay.
Prometheus operator specifically, sorry.
Okay, the Prometheus operator.
Prometheus, yeah.
Okay. The other thing that I should let everyone know, if you didn't already know, Chart Museum and Helm had security issue, and there were new releases yesterday. So go, if you're using Chart Museum or Helm, go update. The full details of the disclosures are on our blog. CVE numbers have been requested. That's where we're at, but there are releases that fix this.
How nasty was it? I didn't read.
How nasty is it? We did scores on it and put in a request for the CVEs with scores. The Chart Museum was a 9.1, and the Helm one was like a 5.8. So the Helm one was rather low, but the Chart Museum one actually has potential for some pretty bad impacting situations.
Was it in certificates?
No. So basically, the gist of it is you can have paths in a chart file that lead outside of the chart directory, like .. or full rooted paths. And so you can have archive files that explode files out to anywhere on the file system. And we had situations where that was not accounted for in our handling of those archives and what we were doing with them. But yes, that is actually a problem. And it's a general archive thing. And we just didn't account for that bad behavior when you expand the archives and get information out of them and use it. So we make sure everything's clean going in, but if I go manually craft an archive, somebody could create a bad actor, not using Helm tools.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And just to be clear, this only really is for, if I read that right, it doesn't happen really server side with Tiller. It's really only on your machine, the person running the command.
For Helm, it's only client side, yeah, because it has to do with things like linting, or and when you explode something from linting, or and you point it to a tarball, or when you fetch an untar from a remote location,
right,
that's when it's going to hit you with Helm. With Chart Museum, you're somewhat mitigated if you have auth turned on or auth in front of it. But it's the case where you don't have that it gets really bad. And auth and Chart Museum is off by default right now. So. Those 2 things. So update if you got them. So we used a full hour. Anything else anyone wanted to talk about? Thanks y'all for a lively discussion.
Thanks. Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Have a wonderful week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. See
And
you.
you.